if I'm being honest, I was contemplating whether or not to even make this video because literally no matter what I say, somebody is going to take issue with it. If I show any support of Vaxry, it'll be seen as downplaying the issue. If I don't, it'll be seen as throwing the project under the bus. If I say nothing whatsoever, people will just make things up and make that what my opinion is. But looking at my numbers, I can assume that most of you are probably adult. I'm sure some of you are lying about your age, but most of you are actually adults. And I don't need to tell you what to think. But I have seen a lot of people just really confused about what's going on and don't really have the historical context behind why this is happening in the first place, because this is not a singular event. This has been going on for a couple of years now. All of this first began with an incident in the Hyprland Discord server. Now, most people when talking about this link back to Skelly's post over on Mastodon. So, a user by the name of Oro, who you've probably seen across various different issue trackers, they get involved in a ton of different projects. So they joined the Hyprland Discord server. Now, at the time, Discord didn't have the, I don't know what the setting's called, but there's like a setting where you can set your pronouns in it. So Oro, like a lot of people did at the time, put that in the name they have on Discord. Now, one of the moderators in the Hyprland Discord server saw this and changed it over to who/cares. If you look through various online forums, you'll see different comments being made, whether they be from Vaxry or other members of the community, but this is generally accepted as the catalyst that started the rest of this situation. Now, at the time, and basically up until the launch of Plasma 6, I was making use of Hyprland. When I heard about this incident, I decided to have Vaxry on my podcast, basically to have him explain what his side of the story was, because a lot of people were saying how bad Vaxry was and how bad this is and how bad that is, and that's totally fair. But I wanted to hear what Vaxry's opinion on the situation was. Now, at least at the time, and I'm sure he'd probably agree with me here, he was very much the embodiment of 4chan discussions. Take that as you will, but it wasn't seen as a super important matter. He did see it as like, yeah, okay, this was kind of unprofessional and maybe I shouldn't have done it like this, but it wasn't seen as like a super serious issue. Now, due to this interaction, the Hyprland Discord server, along with what was generally seen as pretty lackluster moderation, in many ways just kind of non-existent moderation unless it was actively breaking the Discord TOS because that could get the server pulled down, this led to a conversation between Drew DeVault and Vaxry. This also led to Drew's first blog post, Hyprland is a toxic community. And when people describe Hyprland as a toxic place to be, generally they link back to this post. All relevant links will be contained in the description down below. I highly recommend you go and read them for yourself. Now, when this blog post came out, it got quite a bit of attention because that's what tends to happen with Drew's post, because Drew's been around for a long time. He was the guy who started Sway and started W Roots before Simon Sir took over the project. Now, when this occurred, some people went around to projects like OpenSUSE and requested they delete the Hyprland package from their repos. Now, the OpenSUSE guys basically didn't really care about this. The first guy here basically saying that they don't see Drew as a legitimate source of information and would want to hear from a third party instead. And then the other guy here basically saying that unless Hyprland itself is a toxic application, it won't be removed from OpenSUSE. Their community being toxic isn't relevant to whether or not OpenSUSE is going to package the application. This maintainer didn't see it as a reason to drop Hyprland from OpenSUSE entirely because a large chunk of users have never interacted with the Hyprland community, and depriving them from using their preferred compositor feels a lot more unfair to me. Now, this first situation with Drew led to Vaxry's first blog post, Misinformation about the Hyprland community. In this post, he basically states that he feels like the Who Cares incident was being mischaracterized and context wasn't being shown like it should be. But he does believe the situation was handled very unprofessionally, and instead of a nickname change, he should have just banned them instead. Personally, I don't think he should have banned them instead. The level of conversation of these shows as it being mischaracterized is pretty much the normal level of conversation you see in the Discord anyway. At the same time, someone also suggested the addition of a code of conduct, which initially Vaxry wasn't that big of a fan of, saying this has no place in a serious blog post like this. His main issue with it is if he has a code of conduct, this is something he's going to be held to later down the line. So if later down the line he maybe changes his position on what is going to be said, then you still have this code of conduct here, so people can reference back to that, and he just didn't want to deal with it. Saying if we'd have a code of conduct, the only thing I could safely put in it would be, don't be an arsehole, which should be a default online. Now, following further discussion, Vaxry wrote another blog post, changes to the Hyprland community. This was changes to both the Discord and the GitHub itself. The GitHub now has a code of conduct, which you can see right here, which he openly describes as a pretty lax code of conduct. It's 96 lines long, and a good portion of those lines are how it's going to be enforced and who to contact about them. The main rules are right here. Like, what is that, 12 lines? I don't know how many lines that is. Along with this, they also reworked the Discord rules, which, in the context of Discord rules, are once again fairly light rules. Pretty much just follow Discord TOS, go to the right channels if you want to post help requests, don't ping mods for things that are completely useless, and don't be mean. Now, from my experience, if you don't want to deal with people making offensive jokes, the Hyprland community is absolutely not for you. If something is perceived as a joke, most of the time, it is going to be allowed through. It's not as bad as, 4chan, Kiwi Farms, anything like that. It's basically as much as you would get from Twitter, for example. So in many ways, it does often devolve into absolute chaos. Could the Discord be moderated better? Absolutely. However, I don't think the Discord should exist in the first place. I do not think that most open source projects should have a Discord associated with them. They don't need it. It doesn't need to exist. It only leads to drama. I would know this because I am very, very tempted to go and delete my own server. So between then and now, Vaxry and Drew have been making constant jabs at each other. Anytime any slight mention of the other person is made, they're like, I'm going to talk about it. Basically, they don't like each other and will not let it go no matter how much time passes. Now, as for the recent incident, this is an interaction between Lyude Paul, a member of the Freedesktop board, along with a member of the Code of Conduct enforcement team. In response to these emails, Vaxry wrote a blog post titled, How Freedesktop/Red Hat Harass Other Projects into Submission. Now, even if you are not at all interested in his interpretation of the emails, if you go all the way down to the bottom, there is a PDF of the full conversation. Again, I highly recommend you go and read it for yourself. So with Lyude's emails, these are coming from her Red Hat address. This will be relevant in a moment, but this is also the address that she explicitly states is the address she uses for Freedesktop enforcement. Now, this first email is basically saying that this is a formal warning from the Freedesktop Code of Conduct team, referencing the events we talked about earlier in the video, and she and the rest of the Code of Conduct team expect to not see these events happen again in the future. If this comes up again in the future, we will have to consider further action. Vaxry felt like this was an attempt at intimidation by making use of that Red Hat address, making it seem like it's coming from Red Hat corporate itself, and felt like this was Lyude overstepping her bounds, as Hyprland is not part of the Freedesktop community. It uses Freedesktop code, yes, but it's not a Freedesktop project. He also felt like using this Red Hat email was unprofessional. Now, I have been informed that Red Hat likes people to use their official email when doing things like working in Freedesktop because it basically acts like free marketing. The TLDR of Vaxry's reply is basically, you don't hold authority over Hyprland or the Hyprland projects, so if you'd like to discuss the code of conduct, that's fine. Otherwise, go away. Now, this blog post by Vaxry initially didn't get that much attention. Now it has 21,000 views, but this is after everyone found it. It got attention after the second blog post was made, Freedesktop/Red Hat's Code of Conduct team is worse than you thought. Now, the reason it got so much attention is it got cross-posted outside of the Hyprland community over to r/Linux, where right now it has 1,300 comments and 1,100 upvotes. This might not seem like that much in the context of normal things on Reddit. In the case of Linux, this is massive. To my surprise, though, even though it has been very, very heated, it hasn't been locked. They're still just letting people talk here. Now, this second blog post is about the reply he got from Lyude. Lyude was not very happy about the original blog post being made, about the response that she got, and pretty much about the whole situation happening in the first place. Along with this, the main thing you've probably heard about, Vaxry being banned from the Freedesktop project. Now, because everything is licensed under these open source licenses, this doesn't affect the ability of Vaxry to actually write Hyprland code itself. Vaxry can still make use of the repos. Vaxry is just unable to communicate in the Freedesktop channels or send code back upstream. Now, Brodie also wrote a blog post regarding this situation titled FDO's Conduct Enforcement Actions regarding Vaxry. Along with this, there is a video from Nico Loves Linux basically going over the entire situation. This is, in my opinion, a fairly good video, and I feel like a fairly unbiased video simply going over what actually happened in the situation. Now, here is what I think. Go and read the blog post from Brodie. Go and read the blog post from Vaxry. Go and read all of them. Go and watch his appearance on Tech of a Tea. Once you've done that, come to your own conclusion on what happened in this situation, because if you look at the Reddit post, there is a lot of people on both sides of this matter. There are people that think that Vaxry did nothing wrong, and Lyude is massively overstepping her bounds, and FDO is massively stepping over their bounds, and there are other people that think that every single thing that Vaxry said is wrong, Vaxry is a terrible person, and nobody should want to work with Vaxry, and nobody should use Hyprland. This is not a situation where pretending like the people on the other side don't exist is going to make it go away. This is going to be the first of many situations where the FOSS ecosystem is going to have to deal with the fact that there is a lot of people that you do not agree with. There are people that you might outright think are horrible people and shouldn't be involved in this space, but they are not going to go away. So trying to come up with some way to deal with this now is much better than waiting for this to get worse and worse and worse, because there is going to be more and more division as the years go on. I feel like that part didn't have enough context. I'm recording this section close to midnight, so ignore the tired sounding voice and ignore the shirt change. I think it is totally fine for a project to choose who they want to associate with. If they want to block someone, if they want to ban someone, that is totally fine, you know, freedom of association and all that. But what you have to realize, and I think a lot of people have not come to terms with this, is if you want to go down the route of getting rid of everybody that you think is a terrible person, you can do that. But this situation has shown that there is hundreds, if not thousands of people on both sides of this argument. And you can get rid of them if you want to, but there's going to be a lot of them. You're not going to get rid of one person, 5 people, or 10 people, and the problem is going to go away. There is going to be a lot of work if you want to go down this route. And that is okay if that is what you want to do. It is also okay if you just want to focus on the code and focus on the project. Also fine as well. I think the best thing that can come out of this situation is that people start looking at the projects they are using. They start looking at the way that they want to see their world curated, because you have so many amazing tools online to curate what you want to interact with. If you don't want to interact with Hyprland, you can very easily do that. If you don't want to interact with FDO, you can very easily do that. All of those tools are there for you to make use of to curate your experience the way you want it to be curated. But you have to take the power into your own hands and start making decisions for yourself. You have to decide what your line is. You have to decide what projects you want to get involved in and what projects you want to use. If you want to know whether or not I'm going to use Hyprland, I don't know. The last time I used it, there was a really big portal bug that made me stop using it. That was a big part of the reason why I wanted to try Plasma 6. My next plan is trying out Cosmic and seeing if Cosmic is good. From there, I don't know what's going to happen in the future. But until then, I'm going to go. I am sure the comments are going to be brilliant for this video. I'm sure they're going to be the nicest place possible where nobody is arguing. Everybody is being nice. Everybody is having a civil discussion. At least that's what they're like in my head. It's definitely not going to be like that in the real world, though. So, let me know your thoughts on the situation down below. Please try to be civil. And no matter what your opinion on this matter is, don't harass any of the parties involved. That is not going to change anything, no matter how much you think it is. So, If you like the video, go like the video. If you really like the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon, subscribe, Libera, link in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and I need a break.